But as she reached for a measuring spoon, the familiar buzz of her husband David's phone sliced through the bakery's symphony. She glanced at the phone, sitting abandoned on the counter where David had left it during his rushed goodbye. He'd stopped by the bakery earlier to grab a coffee, offering her a distracted peck on the cheek before muttering something about a late meeting. A pang of something she couldn't quite name, disappointment flashed through her, but it was quickly eclipsed by her habitual focus on her work. The phone buzzed again. Olivia ignored it, but then it vibrated a third time. Her brow furrowed. David rarely received this many messages in a row. Curiosity nudged her closer. She told herself she wasn't snooping, she was simply checking if it was urgent. As her flour-dusted fingers hovered over the screen, the message preview glowed. "I can't stop thinking about last night, Claire." Time seemed to slow. The cheerful clatter of the bakery faded into the background, replaced by the deafening rush of blood in her ears. Her hand, still gripping the measuring spoon, trembled. She blinked, convinced she must have misread the text. But the words stayed there, stark and undeniable. Olivia's chest tightened, as if the room had suddenly shrunk. Her hands instinctively went to her apron, clutching at its edges as if the familiar fabric could anchor her. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thumping of her heart. "This can't be right." She put the spoon down carefully, the sound of metal against marble a sharp contrast to her rising chaos. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on her team of bakers and baristas, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in their boss's chest. She forced a breath, trying to regain composure. But the text had shattered something fragile inside her, a sense of security she hadn't even realized she'd been clinging to. Grabbing David's phone, she made her way to her private office at the back of the bakery, her legs moving automatically while her mind reeled. The office, with its cluttered desk and walls adorned with photos of her best creations, usually brought her comfort. Today, it felt stifling. Olivia slumped into her chair, her hand clutching the phone as if it were a lifeline and a weapon all at once. Her eyes stared blankly at the screen. Questions swirled in her head. Who was Claire? What happened last night? How long had this been going on? Tears stung her eyes, but she swallowed hard, refusing to let them fall. Not yet. She needed answers. Clicking the phone open would have been easy, but a part of her hesitated. Did she want to see more? Would it break her completely? Her mind raced back to the last few weeks, scanning for signs she might have missed. The late nights at the office, the vague excuses, the distracted way David had been speaking to her. Had it all been a lie? The realization hit her like a cold wind. This didn't come out of nowhere. She just hadn't wanted to see it. Olivia set the phone down on the desk, her fingers resting on its edges. For a moment she simply stared at it, the object now feeling foreign and tainted. Her reflection stared back at her from the computer monitor on her desk, tired eyes, flour-smudged cheeks, and a faint tremble in her lips. "No," she murmured again, this time with a steadiness that surprised even her. She couldn't confront him yet, not without knowing the full truth. David was smooth, a master at turning conversations in his favor. She'd need proof, something undeniable. Her gaze shifted to the framed photo on her desk, her and David on their wedding day, laughing as they fed each other cake. The memory felt like a cruel parody now, a moment from a life that suddenly felt distant. Olivia stood, her resolve hardening. "This isn't over," she whispered, brushing her hands against her apron, as if shedding the weight of betrayal. "Not now, but I'll be ready." The sound of the bakery door chiming snapped her back to the present. Squaring her shoulders, Olivia left the office, her face calm and composed. There was dough to shape, customers to serve, and plans to be made. David didn't know it yet, but Olivia was done playing the passive wife. The cracks in their foundation were exposed, and she would rebuild, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. A month earlier, life in Olivia Bennett's world seemed idyllic, or at least, it appeared that way to everyone looking in from the outside. Her bakery was thriving, its reputation as the town's most inviting haven cemented by the steady stream of customers filling the cozy space each day. The scent of buttery pastries and fresh coffee wrapped the bakery like a warm hug, and Olivia's infectious energy kept the place alive. At the heart of the bakery was Olivia herself, a petite powerhouse with auburn hair pulled into a loose bun and flowers streaked across her apron. She worked tirelessly, her hands a blur as she shaped dough or piped intricate designs onto cakes. This was her dream, a business she'd built from the ground up, turning long nights and hard work into something tangible and beautiful. It wasn't unusual for the bakery to stay open late. On one such evening, Olivia was perched on a stool behind the counter, sorting through receipts and orders. The soft glow of string lights reflected off the polished countertops. She sighed as she glanced at the clock, 9:15 p.m. David was supposed to be home by now. Her phone buzzed, breaking her focus. It was a text from David, working late again. "Don't wait up." "Figures," she muttered, setting the phone down harder than she intended. David, her husband of 10 years, was a corporate lawyer. His demanding job often meant late nights and long hours, or so he claimed. Olivia had accepted that his career came with sacrifices, ones she'd gladly made for the sake of their marriage. She'd put her ambitions on hold early in their relationship to support his climb up the corporate ladder, only returning to her own dreams when the bakery became a reality. Still, lately his absences felt different. They weren't just frequent, they were accompanied by a growing detachment that gnawed at her. Even when he was home, he wasn't there. The sound of the bell over the bakery door startled Olivia from her thoughts. She looked up to see Mia Harper, her best friend, stepping inside. "You're still here?" Mia asked, raising an eyebrow as she shook off the evening chill. "Where else would I be?" Olivia replied with a weak smile, gesturing to the half-finished stack of receipts in front of her. Mia plopped onto a stool across from her. "Let me guess. David's working late again?" Olivia nodded, her smile faltering. Mia tilted her head, studying Olivia's face. "You know, Liv, you're allowed to say something. He's been working late a lot lately. Doesn't it bother you?" Olivia shrugged, her fingers fiddling with the edge of a receipt. "I don't know, Mia. He's busy. I'm busy. Maybe we've just grown used to it." "Used to what?" "Barely seeing each other." Mia pressed. Her voice was gentle, but her concern was unmistakable. "You deserve more than this half attention, you know. Look at everything you've built. He should be the one waiting up for you." Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Deep down, she knew Mia was right. David rarely celebrated her successes. When she'd landed a glowing feature in the local paper a few months back, he'd skimmed the article with a distracted "that's nice" leave before heading back to his emails. That night, after closing up the bakery, Olivia arrived home to an eerily quiet house. The living room, with its sleek leather furniture and perfectly curated decor, felt cold. It was a far cry from the warm, bustling energy of her bakery. She found David in his usual spot, sprawled on the couch, laptop balanced on his knees. He glanced up briefly as she walked in. "Hey," he said, his tone casual. "How was your day?" "Busy," Olivia replied, setting her bag down. "We sold out of the strawberry tarts again. I think I'll have to start doubling the batch." David nodded absently, his eyes already drifting back to his screen. "Anything interesting at work?" Olivia ventured, hoping to spark a conversation. "Same old," he replied, not looking up. Olivia stood there for a moment, waiting for him to ask about her day, her plans, her world. But the moment passed, and the silence settled in. As she made her way to the kitchen, she noticed an envelope on the counter, a receipt from an upscale restaurant in the next town over. It caught her attention because she hadn't been there in years. "David, when were you at Orchid Restaurant?" she called out, holding up the receipt. "Oh, that," he said, not bothering to look up. "Just a client lunch. It's nothing." But something about his tone made her stomach twist. The answer came too quickly, too smoothly, like he'd practiced it. Olivia stared at the receipt, her mind racing. She shook her head, brushing off the unease. "He's my husband," she reminded herself. "I'm overthinking." Still, as she climbed into bed that night, the doubt lingered. And for the first time, she found herself wondering if the cracks in their marriage were deeper than she'd realized. It was a quiet Thursday evening when the first undeniable clue landed in Olivia's lap. She was sorting through a growing pile of unopened mail on the kitchen counter, her fingers moving absent-mindedly as she sifted through bills, promotional flyers, and catalogs. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. David had texted earlier to say he'd be home late again, and though Olivia told herself she was used to it, the hollow ache in her chest said otherwise. Her hands paused as they landed on a sleek black envelope embossed with silver script, DeLuca Jewelers. Curious, she tore it open and pulled out the receipt inside. The name on the bill read David Bennett, and the item purchased was an elegant diamond necklace worth over $2,000. The date on the receipt was from last week. Olivia stared at the paper, her stomach twisting into a knot. A flicker of hope tried to light itself in her mind. Maybe it was meant for her, an early anniversary gift, or a surprise just because. But the hope dimmed as quickly as it came. Their anniversary was months away, and David had never been one for extravagant gestures. A bitter thought crept in. He doesn't even notice when I wear the jewelry I already own. She walked to the bedroom and opened her jewelry box, searching for any sign that the necklace might have been hers. As expected, it wasn't there. She returned to the kitchen, clutching the receipt, her mind churning. Her memory betrayed her with flashes of David's behavior over the past few weeks, the late nights, the vague explanations, the way he'd barely looked up from his phone during dinner. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a troubling picture. Olivia's grip on the receipt tightened as a wave of anger swept through her. "Not this time," she muttered under her breath, setting the paper down with more force than necessary. She picked up her phone and dialed Mia's number. Mia arrived at the bakery the next morning, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Okay, spill," she said, sliding onto a stool at the counter as Olivia handed her a lat. "What's going on?" Olivia placed the receipt on the counter between them. Mia's eyebrows shot up as she read it. "DeLuca Jewelers," she said, her tone skeptical. "Please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." "I wish I could," Olivia replied, crossing her arms over her chest. "But I know David, Mia. This isn't for me, and it's not the first thing that's felt off." Mia frowned. "What else?" "Late nights. Random expenses he can't explain. And when I ask him about his schedule, he gets defensive or changes the subject." Olivia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I just don't want to jump to conclusions. But my gut is telling me something's wrong." Mia leaned forward, her journalist instincts kicking in. "Then let's get to the bottom of it. You deserve to know the truth." Olivia hesitated. "How? I can't exactly hire a private investigator." "You don't need one," Mia said, pulling her phone out of her bag. "We live in the age of social media, my friend. If there's something or someone to find, we'll find." That evening, after the bakery closed, Olivia and Mia sat in the small office at the back of the shop, hunched over Olivia's laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated their determined faces as Mia worked quickly, creating a fake social media profile with a name and photo generic enough to avoid suspicion. "Now," Mia said, cracking her knuckles, "let's see who David's been spending his time with." Olivia watched as Mia navigated the labyrinth of social media connections. It didn't take long before they stumbled upon a photo that made Olivia's stomach drop. There, on a recently tagged post, was David. He was sitting at a cafe table, laughing with a woman Olivia didn't recognize. The woman, blonde, polished, and younger, was leaning in close, her hand resting on his arm. The caption read, "Another productive meeting with the brilliant David Bennett." "Who is that?" Olivia whispered, though the name was right there on the screen, Claire Mitchell. Mia clicked on Claire's profile, and they were immediately greeted by a stream of photos. Olivia's heart sank further as she saw picture after picture of Claire, often accompanied by captions referencing real estate deals and power lunches. "Wait," Olivia said, pointing to one photo. "That necklace. Look at the necklace she's wearing." Mia zoomed in on the image. Sure enough, the delicate diamond necklace around Claire's neck matched the description on the receipt Olivia had found. "That son of a," Mia started, but Olivia cut her off with a wave of her hand. "Not yet," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need more than this. He'll just talk his way out of it if I don't have proof." Mia looked at her friend, admiration softening her features. "You're stronger than most people I know, Liv. Let's get you what you need." For the next few days, Olivia played the role of the unsuspecting wife. She listened as David rattled off excuses for his late nights and dodged her questions with his usual charm. But now she saw through his smooth facade. Each lie only fueled her determination to uncover the full extent of his betrayal. Meanwhile, she continued collecting evidence. With Mia's help, she documented everything: screenshots of Claire's photos, records of David's unusual expenses, and even timestamps that contradicted his alibis. Olivia's anger simmered beneath the surface, but she refused to let it consume her. Instead, she channeled it into planning. She wasn't ready to confront David, not yet. If she was going to expose him, she needed to do it on her terms, in a way that left no room for doubt. Late one night, as Olivia sat in the dim light of her office, reviewing the growing pile of evidence, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the darkened computer screen. Her eyes, though tired, burned with resolve. "This isn't just about him," she murmured to herself. "This is about me. About reclaiming my life." The next morning, as she rolled out dough for the bakery's signature croissants, a strange sense of clarity settled over her. David may have underestimated her, but that was his mistake. And Olivia Bennett had no intention of letting him off easy. The idea struck Olivia late one night as she stood in her bakery, the warm glow of the oven light casting flickering shadows across the room. The rhythmic hum of the mixer filled the air, a soothing backdrop to her racing thoughts. She leaned against the counter, staring at the delicate latticework of a freshly baked pie. The lattice reminded her of something fragile, something intricate like trust. And just like that, she knew what she needed to do. The next morning, Olivia was all business. She gathered her small team of employees and Mia, who had become a near constant presence since the discovery of David's betrayal. They sat around a large table in the bakery, the scent of cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air. "I've decided to organize a charity bake-off," Olivia announced, her voice steady but her eyes gleaming with determination. Mia raised an eyebrow. "A bake-off? That's not where I thought this was going." "Trust me," Olivia replied, her lips curving into a sly smile. "This isn't just about baking. It's about making a statement." Her employees exchanged curious glances, but Mia leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." Olivia explained her vision: a town-wide event held at the community center, complete with contests, tastings, and a grand prize. The bake-off would celebrate the town's love of food and community, but its true purpose lay in the showpiece cake. She intended to unveil a cake layered with hidden messages about trust, loyalty, and betrayal. "It's symbolic," Olivia said, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. "Every layer will tell a story, and by the time I cut into it, there will be no mistaking what I'm saying." Mia's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You're not just baking a cake, you're staging a mic drop." "Exactly," Olivia replied. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning. Olivia threw herself into the details of the event, using the busy work to keep her mind sharp and her emotions in check. Flyers were designed, invitations were sent, and sponsors were secured. The entire town buzzed with excitement over the upcoming event, eagerly anticipating Olivia's famed culinary creations. Mia proved invaluable during this time, not only helping with logistics but also providing emotional support. Late one evening, as they sat in Olivia's office reviewing the final guest list, Mia glanced at her friend and said, "You know, Liv, this isn't just about exposing David. It's about you taking back your power." Olivia paused, the pen in her hand hovering over the paper. "I know," she said softly, "but I want it to be more than that. I want people to see that you can rebuild, even when everything feels like it's falling apart." Mia reached across the desk and gave Olivia's hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're going to do more than rebuild. You're going to thrive." In the days leading up to the bake-off, Olivia began planting subtle seeds of doubt about David's integrity among their mutual friends. It wasn't difficult. She had always been the more sociable half of their marriage, and people naturally gravitated toward her. At a neighborhood barbecue, she casually mentioned how distant David had been lately, phrasing it in a way that invited concern without outright accusing him. "It's probably just work stress," she said with a sigh, sipping her iced tea. But sometimes I wonder if he's been keeping things from me." Her words hung in the air, and she could almost see the gears turning in her neighbors' minds. They'd noticed it too. The late nights, the missed gatherings, the way David often seemed more interested in his phone than the people around him. By the time the barbecue ended, Olivia had subtly shifted the narrative. She didn't need to say much. People were more than capable of drawing their own conclusions. The charity bake-off had reached its zenith. The community center buzzed with excitement, its walls adorned with colorful banners proclaiming, "Baking for a Cause." Tables were laden with mouth-watering displays of cupcakes, pies, and cookies, and the room was filled with the hum of cheerful chatter and the clink of glasses. The air smelled of warm sugar and citrus, the perfect backdrop to Olivia's carefully orchestrated moment. In the center of the room stood Olivia's showpiece cake, towering and magnificent, illuminated by a soft spotlight. Its pristine white fondant gleamed, and intricate edible lace cascaded down its sides, creating a sense of elegance that drew every eye. The cake was the talk of the event, and Olivia had deflected numerous questions about its deeper meaning with coy smiles and cryptic answers. Olivia herself moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her calm demeanor masking the storm brewing beneath the surface. She wore a sleek emerald dress that shimmered under the lights, her auburn hair swept into a polished updo. Beside her, Mia acted as a quiet but steady support, her eyes darting between Olivia and the room's guests, always on alert. "Showtime," Mia murmured, leaning in as Olivia approached the makeshift stage at the front of the room. Olivia nodded, her palms tingling with nervous anticipation. She stepped onto the stage, the sound of her heels clicking against the wooden floor drawing the room's attention. The crowd quieted, turning to face her. David, standing near the back with a glass of whiskey in hand, froze mid-conversation. His jaw tightened as Olivia's gaze briefly met his before she turned to address the room. "Good evening, everyone," Olivia began, her voice clear and confident. "First, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This event isn't just about showcasing the incredible talent in our community. It's about coming together for a cause that reminds us what truly matters: trust, connection, and resilience." The crowd applauded, their smiles warm and encouraging. Olivia's eyes scanned the room, pausing momentarily on David, whose expression had shifted to a cautious neutrality. Claire stood a few feet away, attempting to blend into the background, but the tension in her posture betrayed her unease. "This cake," Olivia said, gesturing to the towering confection, was inspired by the complexities of life. Each layer represents something we all encounter: challenges, triumphs, bitterness, sweetness. Together, they create something beautiful if the foundation is strong. She picked up a silver cake knife from the table beside her. The room fell silent as Olivia pressed the blade into the cake, cutting a perfect slice from its base. She held up the slice, revealing its intricate layers: dark chocolate, lemon curd, vanilla sponge, and vibrant red velvet. "Let me explain what these layers symbolize," she continued, her voice soft but steady. "The chocolate at the base represents stability, a foundation we all need to build our lives. But when that foundation is shaken," she glanced at David, whose grip on his glass tightened, "everything above it starts to crack." The crowd murmured, unsure whether her words were merely philosophical or something more personal. Olivia placed the slice on a plate and cut into the next layer, revealing the lemon curd. This layer, lemon curd, represents bitterness, the moments that challenge us, that test our patience and resolve. Her gaze flicked to Claire, who shifted uncomfortably, her smile faltering. "And then," Olivia said, "slicing into the third layer, we find sweetness again, the vanilla sponge. A reminder that even in our darkest times, there's hope for something better." Finally, she cut into the topmost layer, the vibrant red velvet. "And this," she said, holding the slice aloft, "represents passion. The love, the fire, the things that drive us. But passion can also burn if not tempered by honesty and loyalty." A murmur rippled through the crowd as her words hung in the air. Olivia placed the knife down and turned back to the audience, her expression a mixture of vulnerability and strength. "This cake," she said, her voice softening, "is a reflection of my journey over the past year. I've faced challenges I never expected, moments that tested my trust and resilience. But I stand here tonight stronger because of it. And I want to remind everyone here, when life shakes your foundation, you have the power to rebuild, layer by layer. The room erupted in applause, but the atmosphere was far from celebratory. Whispers spread like wildfire, guests exchanging glances and murmured theories. David's face was pale, his composure slipping as he realized the true purpose of Olivia's speech. Claire, once poised, looked as though she wished she could vanish into thin air. Mia, standing near the stage, caught Olivia's eye and gave her a small, approving nod. Olivia allowed herself a brief smile before stepping down from the stage. She moved gracefully through the crowd, pausing to thank guests for their kind words, all the while acutely aware of the storm brewing behind her. Olivia, a familiar voice called, sharp and low. She turned to find David standing a few feet away, his expression a mixture of anger and panic. "David," she replied evenly, folding her hands in front of her. "Enjoying the event?" "What the hell was that speech?" he hissed, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "Are you trying to humiliate me?" "I'm sharing my story," Olivia said, her tone calm but firm. "If it feels personal, maybe you should ask yourself why." David opened his mouth to retort, but was interrupted by the arrival of Claire, who had evidently decided to face the music. Her attempt at a composed expression faltered as she addressed Olivia. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Olivia cut her off with a raised hand. "Claire, don't. I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you've been doing." Her words were quiet but carried enough weight to silence the room. Heads turned, and a ripple of whispers confirmed what everyone was beginning to suspect. Claire flushed crimson, her composure crumbling as she stammered, "I didn't mean." "Save it," Olivia said, her voice like steel. She turned back to David. "You've both made your choices. Now, you'll face the consequences." As Olivia walked away, the room buzzed with the aftermath. Guests avoided David and Claire, their disapproval evident in their averted gazes and whispered conversations. Olivia, meanwhile, felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The weight she'd been carrying for weeks had finally lifted. Mia caught up to her near the door. "You were incredible," she said, handing Olivia a glass of champagne. "You made your point loud and clear." Olivia took a sip, her lips curving into a satisfied smile. "And I didn't even have to raise my voice." The sun rose over the small town the morning after the charity bake-off, casting a soft golden glow across its streets. But for David Bennett, the day brought no warmth. He sat in his home office, scrolling through his phone, his face pale and jaw tight. The fallout from Olivia's bold revelation the night before had spread like wildfire. The local gossip mill was relentless. Whispers about David's infidelity and his connection to Claire Mitchell rippled through the town. His carefully crafted reputation, the charming corporate lawyer, the devoted husband, was now irreparably tarnished. Former colleagues avoided him at the cafe. Neighbors no longer waved as he passed by. Even the local newspaper ran a thinly veiled editorial about the importance of integrity, clearly aimed in his direction. Claire, meanwhile, had retreated into isolation. The backlash she faced was swift and unforgiving. Real estate clients began canceling contracts, unwilling to associate with her. Within a week, a moving truck was parked in front of her house, her departure from town as hasty as her involvement with David had been. In stark contrast, Olivia's world was blossoming. At the bakery, the air was filled with a renewed energy. Customers streamed in not just for her pastries, but to express their admiration for her strength and resilience. Her story had struck a chord, resonating with those who had faced their own struggles and come out stronger. Mia sat across from Olivia at the bakery's corner table, a steaming cappuccino in hand. "You're a legend, you know that," she said with a grin. "People can't stop talking about how you handled last night." Olivia smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. "It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I needed to do it for myself." "And now?" Mia asked, raising an eyebrow. "Now," Olivia said, leaning back in her chair, "I move forward." True to her word, Olivia took the next steps with quiet determination. Filing for divorce wasn't an act of anger, but one of closure. Sitting across from David in their lawyer's office, she felt an unexpected sense of peace. He looked deflated, his once confident demeanor replaced by a subdued silence. "This is for the best," Olivia said, her tone steady but kind. "We're better off apart." David didn't argue. For once, he seemed to understand that his actions had consequences he couldn't charm his way out of. With the chapter of her marriage closing, Olivia turned her focus to her bakery and a new dream that had begun to take shape. She'd secured a lease for a second location in a neighboring city, a bustling hub that promised endless opportunities. The new space was larger than her current bakery, with high ceilings and expansive windows that let in an abundance of natural light. Standing in the empty storefront one afternoon, Olivia ran her fingers along the cool granite countertops, envisioning the possibilities. "This place is going to be amazing," Mia said, her voice echoing slightly in the open space. Olivia nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's a fresh start. A chance to build something even bigger than before." On opening day, the new bakery was packed with customers eager to see what Olivia had created. The scent of freshly baked bread and pastries wafted through the air as laughter and conversation filled the room. Olivia moved behind the counter with practiced ease, greeting familiar faces and welcoming new ones. She glanced out the window and saw a young couple walking hand in hand, pausing to admire the display in the bakery's window. For a moment, Olivia felt a pang of what she'd lost. But it was fleeting, replaced by the overwhelming sense of pride and joy in what she'd gained. That evening, after the last customer had left and the bakery was quiet, Olivia stood in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. The moonlight streamed through the windows, casting a soft glow over the room. Mia entered, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "To new beginnings," Mia said, handing Olivia a glass. "To strength," Olivia replied, clinking their glasses together. They sipped their wine in companionable silence, the weight of the past lifting with each passing moment. In a final scene, Olivia stood outside her original bakery, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. She thought about how far she'd come, from the betrayal that had once left her broken to the woman she was now, confident, empowered, and unshakable. Her voice, calm and reflective, carried the story to its conclusion. Life has a way of testing us, of shaking our foundations and forcing us to confront truths we'd rather ignore. But those moments, the hard ones, are where we find our strength. They remind us who we are and what we're capable of. She paused, gazing out at the street as laughter from a passing group of friends filled the air. For me, betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something better. I turned my pain into power, and I hope you'll remember that you can too. Olivia's journey is a testament to resilience and growth. She faced betrayal head-on, transforming her pain into a source of strength. Her story reminds us all that the sweetest revenge isn't about getting even. It's about thriving, about building a life that makes us proud. I hope this story inspired you. Until next time, remember, you are stronger than you know.